Hello, friends. Welcome to Coding Garden. Welcome to Daily Programmer Episode 1, where we are going to be solving reverse a string. So this is also another classic interview problem where you need to take a string and put it in reverse order. I'm still classifying this as a beginner problem because if you know iteration and loops and string manipulation, you can solve this problem. So let's look at the problem description. Write a function that takes in a string as input. Return the string with its characters in the opposite order. You can reverse the string in place or with a new variable. Note: try to solve this without using any built-in string or array methods like split, reverse, join. All of those are built-in array methods. I want you to try solving it without them. Now, you should still be able to solve it with them, but you should be able to solve it without them too. And an example of this is, let's say we have a function called reverse string. It takes in hello, and it should return OELLEH, the reverse version of that. And if you pass in world, it should return DLROW, which is the reversed version of that. So I'm going to do my best to solve this first without any built-in methods, a couple more ways, and then I will show you how to do it with built-in methods. I suggest that you try this yourself without watching my solution first, then come back to the video and see how I solve it. So let's get going. I will solve this first with pseudocode. So just one aspect of being a programmer is being able to solve things without code. Like, you need to be able to strategically think through the problem without code. So we're going to do that first. And we'll do that with comments. So in order to reverse this string, I'm going to do it not in place first. So in place means I would be modifying the existing string. I'm just going to build up a brand new string for this. That'll be the first way that I solve it. So in order to do that, I need a place to store the reverse string. Okay, so we start there. We need somewhere to store it. Then I'm going to iterate over the input in reverse, right? So if I look at this string and I start from the end, it's going to be really easy to put it onto this reverse string because if I start at the end, I can just append O and then L and then L, then E and then H. So I'm going to iterate over the input in reverse. I'm going to append the current letter to the reverse string. And after we're done, return the reversed string. So this is my pseudocode. I've thought through how I'm going to do this, right? Like, if you think about it, as a human, most humans that know how to read and write can reverse this string without any sort of algorithm. They can just look at it and look at me, I've reversed it. But really, my algorithm inside my head was look at the last one and then go from there, and that's how I was able to reverse it. So I took that algorithm in my head and tried to convert it into specific steps. Now is the tricky part, because now we need to convert this into code. And like this piece right here, I think some of you that are newer to for loops, you might even have an issue with iterating in reverse. You're like, how do I do that? Is it less than? Is it greater than? Where does stuff go? But we'll figure it out. So let's turn this into actual code. So first, we need a place to store the reverse string. I'm going to create a variable called reversed string, and we'll initialize that to the empty string because it starts off as nothing. Then we iterate over the input in reverse. How do we do that? For loop. We'll have an iterator that starts at the end, right? So typically when you write a for loop, you start at 0. In this case, we need to start at the end. So I'm going to start at input.length. But you'll know the characters in a string are 0-based index. So I actually want to start at length -1, because length -1 is going to give me the index for that very last character in the string. And I want to iterate while I is greater than or equal to 0. So I is going to start off as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, 4. So I is going to start off as 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 0, which is going to be the H in this instance. And I want that. And then -1 will break out because we're past it. So I want to go while I is greater than or equal to 0. And then I will increment I on each iteration. Not increment, decrement, because we're going in reverse. So decrement I on each iteration, and now we'll do the business. So append the current letter to the reverse string. So that's, now that I've figured out the hard part, which is doing a for loop in reverse, now I can just say reverse string plus equals input at I, right? So I'm basically starting at the end, going one by one until I get to the beginning, and then after all of that is done, I have myself a reversed string. Okay, let's start up Quokka. So Quokka is a tool that's going to automatically run my code, so we'll be able to see these outputs here. So I can see right now I returned the wrong thing, and I added to the wrong thing. So this is a little bit confusing, but my function is called reverse string, and my variable is called reversed string with a D. I'm honestly going to just rename this to output, so that I don't confuse myself and make little typos like this. So now you can see my editor was complaining too. Whenever you see a gray variable, that means that variable wasn't being used. But now let's see if I did it. Yes, so this is going to output Oleh, and this is going to output Dro. Cool. So we solved it. We solved it by going in reverse. Let's solve it again, but we can do it without going in reverse. So if we change up the kind of concatenation that's happening right here, we can do it with a regular plain old for loop. So let's do that. Now again, I would recommend, if you're new to programming, write your for loops from scratch every time so you can get really used to what each of these things are doing, because these are some of the most bugs I see in people's code. Like they do greater than versus greater than or equal to, or they start here instead of starting at input length -1. Just be really careful with each one of these to make sure you're doing the right thing. So in this case, if we're going up from the beginning to the end, I'll start I at 0. Because that's going to start on the H here. And then I want to go while I is less than input.length. Because the length here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The length is 5. When I is 4, that's actually the last one. That's O. And then when I is 5, 5 is not less than 5, so it breaks out. So in this case, I just want less than input.length. And then in this case, I want to increment by 1 on each iteration. Now, the piece that needs to change is this right here. And so instead of appending to our output, we need to prepend the output, right? So if I am going from the beginning to the end here, then I need to, on my output, first I'm going to put H. And then when I come across E, I need to put E in front of H. And then when I come across L, I need to put L in front of that. So in order to do that, I can say output equals input at I plus output. So I basically reverse the concatenation. So we take the existing output and then put the new letter in front of it. So now that our for loop is going forward, we're constantly putting a new letter in front instead of putting the reversed letter, or like the last letter, on the end. And this works in the same way, right? So these two solutions are fairly similar. You could also look at this line of code right here. Like, if you look at how if we don't do the shorthand plus equals, what I'm actually writing here is I'm saying output equals output, I'll get this, output plus input at I. So without the shorthand, that's actually what this line of code means. And you can see how when we're going forward, we actually flip those two. So that way it's like, it's prepending it instead of appending it. Okay, so I've solved it in two different ways. One going from the end of the string to the beginning, one going forward and backward. Let's try solving it in place, meaning we're going to modify the input string. So right now, I solved it with a brand new variable, right? I have this output variable, and as I iterate, I'm appending or prepending to that variable, but it's a brand new variable. Input is not changed at all. Let's solve it without a new variable. So I have to get rid of output, and actually I'm going to solve this one with pseudocode because the algorithm is completely different for doing it in place. So in the case of doing it in place, I don't need a new variable because we're doing it in place. I do want to iterate. I think the way we're going to do it is we're going to iterate. Let's think about this. So if we go HELLO, that needs to become OLLEH. If I, one at a time, if I take H and then put it on the end, and then I take E and I put it on the end, and I take L and put it on the end, and I take L and then put it on the end, we need a loop that goes to length -2. I can't even think. How am I going to do this? I don't know. Let's see. So I think we're going to iterate up to input length -2. Because when we reach the last character, we have when we reach the last character, it is now at the beginning, so we don't need to modify it. So I think that's why I'm going length -2. For each character in the string, I will replace the input with the current letter at the end. So input equals input without the first letter and then with the current letter at the end. I think that's how we'll do that. Yeah, even I am having a hard time thinking about this. And then now we can return the input because we modified the input. I'm going to do my best to solve this. I'm probably going to open up Twitch chat, and because I'm live on Twitch right now, I didn't mention that, but I'll open up Twitch chat. Somebody will show me what I did wrong. All right, so I want a for loop. I think this is just going to be a regular plain old one that goes from I equals 0, while I is less than input.length minus 2? Minus 2, because we don't want to look at the last value. And then I increments by 1 on each iteration, like this. Now, replace the input with the current letter at the end. So I think what I want to do is I want to say input equals, right here, I need the input without the first letter. How are we going to do that? I don't know yet. Without the first letter. Stop it. Without the first letter. Plus input at I. No, and actually, no, it's just, okay, now that I think about it, it's just input at 0. If we're constantly taking the first one and putting it on the end, we only ever need I to be 0. So instead of a for loop, I guess we don't use the I value. We just use 0. So take the first letter, put it on the end. Take the first letter, put it on the end, because we're overwriting itself like this. Okay, now, how do I get the input without the first letter? There's a couple of ways to do it. There are built-in string methods. I did say don't use built-in methods because I could use substring. And if I say substring with 1, that will actually give me the string without the first character. And then we're going to take that first character and put it on the end. Let's just see if this works. If this works, I'm actually going to write my own function that does this, so I'm not using built-in functions. But let's see if this works. Now, we get something completely messed up. I mean, honestly, I guess if I go to length -1, there we go. It was length -1. If I was in an interview, I don't know if I would have passed by now. But if we go up to length -1, oh no, that's wrong. I have that wrong. You know what? I'm gonna let somebody in Twitch chat solve this because I can't even think through it right now. I failed the interview, but that's fine. That's fine because I'm gonna practice. I'm also gonna look at someone's Twitch chat solution where they do it in place. The last way I will show you is with more built-in methods. Things like split, reverse, and join. And this is probably the most common way you'll see this solved in JavaScript. But I would argue you should be able to solve it one of these two ways because this is almost language as agnostic, right? We're solving it with JavaScript, but the solution in this way looks very similar in C++, in Java, and C#. This is almost like a universal solution because we're thinking about it in terms of strings and iteration. If you use the built-in methods, it's kind of like a JavaScript-specific solution. So let's do it, but let's do it with built-in methods. So it's usually a one-liner, and what we need to do is reverse is a built-in method to arrays in JavaScript. So if you have an array, you can call reverse, and that will reverse it in place. Strings don't have that function. So in order to use that reverse method, we need to first convert this string into an array. There are multiple ways to do that. The common way is to use the split method. So if I split on the empty string, that's going to convert this string into an array of strings, or an array of characters, essentially. If I use now the built-in reverse function, that's just going to reverse the array, right? So now I have a reversed array. And then lastly, I need to convert it back into a string. So I'm going to do a join on the empty string. So I take that array, turn it back into a string, and finally I have this solution here. But I would argue that like if you just do it this way and you don't understand what's happening here, an interviewer is going to grill you. An interviewer might even be, oh, I want you to implement a reverse function, and both of these essentially are a reverse function. I guess the last thing I'll show is the other ways to turn a string into an array. Like instead of split, you actually could use the spread operator. So the spread operator takes an iterable, turns it into an array, and then we have access to that array method reverse. So this will work in a similar way. The other thing you could do is you could actually potentially call the reverse method on the string. I'm going to try this. It's probably not going to work. And then we're going to take a look at Twitch chat to see the kind of solutions that they came up with. So I think if I do something like array.prototype.reverse, and let's say I want to call that on this input. Cannot assign to read-only property 0 of object. Yeah, so if I want, this doesn't work because this is trying to, basically strings in JavaScript and in most languages are immutable. You can't overwrite. You basically have to create a new version of the string, which is what I was trying to do in my in-place reversal. So you can't do this. So I won't call that. All right, this was a weird one. Hopefully you learned a little bit about iterating up versus iterating backwards, and also you learned a little bit about these array methods. Twitch chat, here I come. I'm going to pull open the Twitch chat now. Please tell me, and I want to see someone's solution. How did you solve this? By doing an in-place search. Okay. Did we want length divided by 2? Maybe we did. Everyone was like, wrong, you're wrong. Swap the characters in the middle. I guess swapping could have been the other way to go, right? Yeah, so if you swap, that's a good way to think about it, right? So if you swap H and O, that's how you could do an in-place in-place reverse. Swap the H and the O, swap the E and the L, and then the L stays in the middle. If it's an odd number. If it's an even number, then you would swap each one. That makes sense. Swapping the beginning and the end. I like that. All right, do I have any solutions in the chat that are an in-place reversal? Here we go. CodeBrains has one. Let's check it out. So, I see. So basically, in order to do the in-place, you turn it into an array first. And like that was the issue that I ran into when I was trying to do array prototype reverse call. It couldn't replace on the string because strings are immutable. But if you turn it into an array first, then you have the reversal. I'll be honest, all of these single letter variable names are hard to read, but L is, I guess, the current place we're at. R is going to be the total length. So while the current place is less than the length, the current character is the array at that index. The array at the next index equals the array at the end, and the array... I can't. Does anybody have another one? I could probably figure this out if I like change the variable names, but it is hard to read with single variable names. Let's see what Blue Hippie has for us. Is this a recursive reverse? Wow. Okay. So we have a function, takes in the string and the current index that we're on. If we're at the end, then return the string at that index. Otherwise, do the recursive call with the string and the next index, so index plus 1, and append all of that to the string at the current index. I talked through this code. I'm not even going to pretend like I understand what's actually happening, but I did talk through it. Recursive code is pretty hard for me. All right, let's see what else you got. L is left. I see. So you have a pointer moving from the left, and then R is the pointer moving from the right. Okay, that makes more sense to me because what we were talking about earlier is you need to swap those two and then swap those two. That makes sense. You have 2 pointers. You have a pointer on the beginning and the end, and then you move it in by 1 and you swap them, and then you move it in by 1 and you swap them until you've reached the middle. That makes more sense. So we have the left pointer and the right pointer. While the left pointer is less than the right pointer, because the moment the pointers are equal to each other, we don't need to swap them because either it's an even length array or we're in the middle and that character stays there. So the current character is the one on the left. The array at the left one equals the array at the right. And also, so we're kind of abusing the plus plus here. So if you didn't know, when you increment a variable like this, and you do it inside of access, it's actually going to use the current value of L for the access. And then after the access, it increments. So this is basically just shorthand for array at L equals array at R. And then after that, saying L plus equals 1. And then similarly, the array at R equals the one at left. So this is like your standard swapping algorithm, and then decrement R. We're getting there. Chad is way smarter than me. All right, let's see what Mark Boots has. We have a string that gets spread into an array. We map over that and call pop, which should remove the last value in the array. And then we use the rest of the array. Does this work? These are all crazy. Yeah, and so PhD Horrible also has a recursive variant. Let's see. Yeah, it's like slightly different. I mean, honestly, like these solutions are so hard for me to read with single letter variable names. Yeah. Yeah, the problem with Unicode. Yeah, we're not even thinking through Unicode at this point. Oh, heck no. All right. So can anyone write the actually, I'll do this. I'm going to convert this into a slightly more readable version. And then I'm going to end the video here. Let's see what Timon did. Whoa. Okay. Replace in string. Reverse. Wait. Okay. Oh, this, I see. Timon wrote a reverse function that works with Unicode characters. Because our solutions probably don't work with Unicode characters. Okay, fine. That's awesome. Thank you everyone for your submissions. That was actually really cool. I'm happy to see how other people solve it. You can also see, like, I know a little bit. Some things are like way beyond me, but let's do this. We're gonna take this solution and write it slightly more readable. And I think I'll also try to write it with using strings instead of an array with like the substring function. I think that makes a little bit more sense at this point. So we have reverse string. It takes in the input. We have CodeBrain solution that does this. We do array.from. And this can actually be a const because we're not overwriting the declaration. And then we want to say array.from with the input. Now, I will say array.from actually does have better support for Unicode. Not that we even care about that right now, but if you're in a more advanced interview and they're like, well, array spreading actually doesn't support Unicode, what's a better way? Array.from actually does. I've dealt with this before when parsing Twitch emotes in a message. But basically that takes input, which is a string, which is an array-like value, and turns it into an array. I'm going to call this array. I'll call this array input, just to be clear. Then we have our left pointer. So left starts on the left-hand side, which is 0. And then we have our right pointer, which starts on the array input on the end. Now we have a while loop that goes while left is less than right. Easy. We'll call this temp, because basically this is when you're implementing a swapping algorithm, honestly, this could be its own programming problem, is how do you swap two values? Basically, you need to keep one of them in a variable so that you can use it later on. So we have our temp variable, which is our array input at the left. So in the instance of hello, that's going to grab the H, and we're putting that into temp. Then we have our array input at the left, and we're going to replace that with our array input on the right. So what that would do is that would put O over here on the H, right? But if you did that replacing, now you lost the H, but you didn't because you put it in temp. And so now we can say array at the right is equal to that temp value. So basically take that O, put it right here, and then take the temporary value and put it where that O is. And then you end up with OELLH. Great. After all of that, increment your variables. So left plus equals 1 and right minus equals 1. Like that. And then finally, we can return array input dot join. So join that array all back together into a string. we've done it. I took CodeBrain's solution and I rewrote it a little bit, but this is how you would do the in-place sort. I think I'm going to stop here because we've been going for a while, but you potentially could rewrite this as like not in place, but basically overwriting input on each iteration. There would be a way to do that. I would say if you have that solution, let me know in the YouTube comments. Post a link to a gist, and we can take a look at how you do it. Where essentially you're not using an array, but you're just like replacing the input value using like substring or something like that. All right, that's it for today's Daily Programmer. I think we went a little bit longer than we had meant to, but this was fun and a good exploration of reverse string. And I would reiterate that you should be able to solve this problem without split reverse join. Like this is just classic. I'm a programmer, not I'm a JavaScript programmer or a C# programmer or whatever else. I know how to use loops. I know how to use strings. You should be able to solve it that way. Okay, thank you for watching. Tune in tomorrow for the next Daily Programmer, and definitely come over to Twitch so you can hang out and show me your solutions whenever I'm doing one of these videos. See ya.